witnesses this morning for your testimony and for your written testimony, which I've reviewed. I want to follow up on a couple of the things that we've talked about here. And one thing, I just want to follow up on Mr. Black's testimony, but open this to anyone who wants to comment on it, hearing about the pilot program and some of these ideas. Are there enough avenues and resources at PHMSA for the agency to consider this data that the new technology can provide and the potential safety benefits that would arise from it? If that's for anybody to answer.
I think there are enough resources for PHMSA to use this. PHMSA has a practice of reviewing best practices put out by the ANSI accredited process that Mr. Rourke of API mentioned. There's a new recommended practice on inspecting and repairing pipelines that provides specific proposals for PHMSA to look at that. We've encouraged PHMSA to review those, consider incorporating them into federal regulations. The administrator, I was encouraged to hear, acknowledge that the special permit process is a way for PHMSA to adopt that on a company-specific basis. We encourage them to do that writ large so that we can more quickly let American public and environment benefit from safety. And if not incorporating by federal regulations or the special permit process, we think the pilot program would let PHMSA, with the resources that it has, use these new technologies and techniques.
Okay. Thank you. I want to switch gears a little bit and ask, with my remaining time, about regulations relating to LNG. So as everyone here knows, the U.S. LNG industry has dramatically changed over the past decade, where many facilities were originally planned as import facilities. The U.S. is now on the verge of becoming a net exporter of oil and gas. So the industry's changed. The regulations governing them haven't really kept pace. That's something I raised earlier. For anyone on the panel, what reforms and regulations are necessary for the LNG export facilities so that the U.S. facilities can continue to be competitive in the global marketplace, but that adequate safety standards are in place here?
Congresswoman, you're exactly right. Just in the last week, 2 new formerly import facilities have been started down the process, according to the announcement of their owners, into export facilities on the Gulf Coast. So that's adding 2 more. What we need to keep in mind are 2 things very quickly. One is the enormous amount of natural gas that will, over time, flow to those facilities and the vast areas across America from which that gas will come. And that's why I talked about the hundreds of thousands of gathering lines that are insufficiently overseen by PHMSA now and need to have much more comprehensive leak detection and repair protocols. But we must begin by mapping them so we know where the heck they are. The second thing is, with respect to storage facilities, and LNG facilities do entail lots of storage facilities, we need 2 things. We need a comprehensive rule from PHMSA governing storage facilities, and you may remember the terrible Aliso Canyon disaster in California a couple of years ago. And secondly, states that have their own implemented storage facility regulatory programs should be able to carry those programs out with respect to storage facilities within their borders. Right now, they're not free to do that with regard to all facilities, particularly interstate storage facilities.
Okay, that's helpful. Yes.
I just build off of something that moves at minus 260 degrees Fahrenheit commands much respect. So your line of questioning is very appropriate. You know, where does PHMSA end on its resource allocation here? Because the last thing I want to do is put these gentlemen in a situation they can't win. And so we need to have some focus on that effort in the future, given the number of new facilities.
Thank you. Mr. Rourke, do you have a
Well, just a quick
comment?
Congresswoman. PHMSA is in the process of looking at some safety regulations for LNG facilities. I think it's important. I think you stated it correctly, and Mr. Holstein added it as well. The growth that is going to come from continued export is going to continue. So it's important that as PHMSA looks at developing these regulations, that they take a risk-based approach to this, and that they also consider the process safety management systems in accordance with that as well.
Thank you. I will yield back the remainder of my